take a deep breath, take the higher road. That's what they always say, as if they know the way. They won't take it from me. But don't ever doubt yourself, 'cause life ain't just a dream. You make your own, so kick and scream. The people will act with a never-ending force. You never had the chance, so what you waiting for? The day has come, my friend, 'cause this is war. It's time and this is war.
In a world where individual rights and healthcare decisions are increasingly under scrutiny, the power of unity and collective action has never been more vital. The medical freedom movement advocates for the fundamental right of individuals to make informed choices about their health and well-being, free from undue influence or coercion. Central to the success of this movement is the spirit of collaboration, the coming together of diverse voices, perspectives, and expertise to amplify the call for autonomy and respect for individual freedoms in healthcare. By fostering partnerships, sharing knowledge, and building bridges across communities, the medical freedom movement paves the way for a future where every person has the right to make decisions about their own body and medical care without fear of stigma or discrimination. Through collaboration, we harness the strength of our collective voices to challenge oppressive systems, advocate for transparency and accountability in healthcare practices, and empower individuals to take control of their own health destinies. Today, we will delve into this journey of solidarity and shared purpose and celebrate the transformative power of collaboration and advancing the principles of medical freedom and individual choice. You've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. I believe all of us have felt over these past 4 years that we have been on the verge of something truly monumental, that we were a part of something so much bigger than ourselves or any of our respective groups or organizations. This movement truly does transcend political affiliation, race, creed, ethnicity, gender, all of the things that have been set out to divide us. It is as if a beautiful tapestry is being woven together, and all of us in this movement are the fabric. You're listening to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Before we get started today, I do want to encourage our listeners, if you have questions or comments, or perhaps you want to share your own experiences with what you're seeing on the front lines of healthcare, you can now submit those to us by sending them directly to nurses@americaoutloud.com. We will be featuring your questions and comments every Friday on a special Q&A episode with the nurses. We encourage all of you to engage in the battle and find your voice in this fight. Until you are able to do that, we will continue to be that voice for you. Joining me today are two incredible warriors in the fight for medical freedom. Susie Olson-Corrigan is a holistic health coach, business consultant, and health freedom advocate who campaigns for medical freedom, individual rights, and informed consent. In 2022, Susie joined a group of global leaders and organizations to create opportunities for collaboration, connection, and strategic action. This culminated into the Inspired Summit, Inspired Hour, and Vision, and the next Inspired Global Leadership Summit in Geneva, Switzerland at the end of this month. Also joining us is Dr. Andrea Nazarenko, a distinguished professional in the field of quantitative and community psychology, dedicated to driving system-level change and ensuring the high-quality implementation of innovative solutions within society. She has long been interested in the fundamental questions of, for whom does environmental or contextual risks matter? She has a solid program of work in top-tier journals that focuses on the methodological and societal solutions to mitigating the transmission of risk. With a passion for fostering positive transformations, Dr. Nazarenko co-founded the Inspired Network alongside Susie. This collaborative endeavor aims to fortify the foundations of the health and freedom movement, bringing together like-minded individuals to enhance and streamline their collective impact. The Inspired Network is based on the science of social change and brings an added level of sophistication to the fight for a better tomorrow. Dr. Nazarenko's commitment to advancing society well-being is reflected in her tireless efforts to bridge gaps and catalyze positive change through strategic and impactful initiatives. Balancing her professional achievements, Dr. Nazarenko is a devoted mother of 3 boys and the supportive wife of a chiropractor. Her commitment to a completely pharma-free lifestyle extends beyond personal choices, embodying a holistic approach to well-being. She is an international best-selling author of a book about the gut microbiome and remains fully committed to sharing her knowledge with other moms seeking to raise happy, healthy children. Susie and Andrea, thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm so excited to have you guys here because you two are like 2 of my most favorite humans. Let's just start out with saying that. 2 of my most favorite humans and incredible warriors in this fight. So I feel like this is a long overdue discussion.
It certainly is. And I'll stop up any moment I have to have some Kimberly Overton time.
Oh, I love you. You guys are great. You know,
we're really happy to be here because you are a solutions-based person, and for far too long, it's all been about, you know, the fight and the struggle. And you acknowledge that, and you do a wonderful job of that, but then also help people, like with remnant nursing and everything else that you have going on. You help people to find those solutions and find their voice, and it completely resonates with everything that we're doing. So when you invited us on, we were like, yeah, we should have done this already. So thank you again for having us.
You're welcome. And you're right. You know, I do try to be very solution-oriented, solution-based, because we've identified the problem a million times over. How many more times do we have to? I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know what the problem is. We get it. And It's time to start focusing on solutions. Not everybody feels that way. And that's what I've come to understand, is that not everybody likes to focus on solutions. Some people just like to keep you pissed off.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and, you know, I think it goes back to this idea that what we experienced from the pandemic and onward for many, like Susie and other mothers of injured children, that we've been experiencing this for decades, right? But everyone had this moment where we've experienced trauma. It's collective trauma, and collective trauma is very similar to individual trauma. It's really just individual trauma scaled up to a societal level. And what happened with the pandemic is that we all experienced it. But the difference between collective trauma and individual trauma is when individual trauma happens, you feel like you're the only one, and you feel like an outsider, and you feel as if no one could possibly understand what you're going through, which acts against you because you socially isolate, and all of the things, and, you know, PTSD sets in and avoidance sets in, and all of the things that we typically think about and associate when it comes to trauma. When collective trauma happens, a different dynamic exists where everybody experiences the trauma. And instead of acknowledging that we have been traumatized, we accept it as a social norm that happened. And if you still feel emotionally distressed by it, or you still feel victimized by it, or you still feel, insert whatever adjective reflects how you as an individual feel, when the rest of the world has moved on, or when the narrative that we should just move on kicks in, then you feel like, well, what's wrong with me? Why should I? And that sort of breeds anger, in my opinion. There's this animosity towards, no, this is not okay. My family member died because of your hospital protocols. My child was injured. I was injured. Or maybe nothing as traumatic as that happened. Maybe I just really felt sad. Maybe I'm having a hard time having hope for the future. And it's almost like we're taught that those emotions don't matter right now. So obviously, Susie and I are solutions people. We're obviously people who are dedicating our life and our career to moving forward and inspiring hope, and that there is a path to the future. But healing comes after the acknowledgement that the trauma has occurred.
Yes.
You know, we have to acknowledge, and we have to have space to acknowledge that collective trauma has occurred. And that does come through talking. But the problem is, in my opinion, we've talked it out so many times, but it's not different. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but it's not that different really from when you're traumatized as an individual. Insert whatever may happen. You might be abused. You might be fired at work, right? And you could keep saying the same thing until you're heard. And once you feel like you're heard, you're ready to move on to the next phase of healing. people are talking a lot about what happened, but I don't know if as a society we collectively feel heard yet. And it's keeping us stuck. And so part of this process and why I love your show so much is because you really hear people. You know, even when you say, if you saw something in the hospital, write to us and tell us what you saw. It's a version of hearing. And I don't know if you ever intentionally did this, but you're giving people space to heal. And, you know, it's so characteristic because that's what nurses do, right? Nurses don't just heal the disease, they heal the individual. And I think that's what you're doing with Remnant Nursing and with this podcast as at a collective level. You're giving people space to be heard so that we can heal at a collective level. There's been enough rumination on the problem. Now it's time to listen to each other so people could move to the next phase of the healing process.
Yeah, I think you're so right, and that is a big part of what we do is we want to recognize that these nurses, their experiences and everything that they've seen and they've done, and it has value, and we want to be able to hear them and share that with the world because it matters. What happens matters, and like you said, we have to acknowledge that we have been traumatized, and very intentionally so, very intentional. Would you agree?
Exactly. I mean, their entire narrative is intentional, right? And when you turn on the media, you the intention and you see how quickly things moved past, right? Even when something happens, there's no time spent on it because they want us to move past it or feel like we're the problem if we forgot, because that plays into victimhood. And so the onus is on us to not keep talking about the problem. We know what the problem is, but keep talking about that transitional period from the problem to the solution, whatever that is. And I think it's less talking and more listening and more feeling and saying, it's okay to feel. It is okay if you feel hurt by what happened in the pandemic, because we all got hurt. And feeling that hurt and acknowledging that hurt is an important part of moving to the next step, because that hurt is what we don't want to transmit to our children, because what our children see and feel is transmitted intergenerationally. How their outlook in the world is transmitted intergenerationally. And so the onus is on us to heal so that we can create a better world for our future and model healing for our children.
Yeah, I think that's perfect too, Andrea, and it just goes right into, personal life experience here. For those of you guys that don't know, I have a son that's 17. He was severely injured by vaccines at 1, and he lost his ability to speak. Back in 2019, we were introduced to a communication method called spellers, and he can now spell through a letterboard. But we talk often about the suffering that he went through and how he's kind of transcended that pain. And he's like one of the most wise people I've ever met in my life. But getting to where we are now, we had to do exactly what you and Andrea are saying, Kimberly, is we had to acknowledge what he went through. We had to acknowledge his suffering. We had to say, it's okay that you feel bad about this. You lost a lot. A lot was taken from you, not that he gave it away, it was taken from him. And that's what so many people experienced during this pandemic. But having that time, and Andrea's also helped me with this, having that time of just sitting and acknowledging those feelings and working through being seen. Like, yes, I'm sad because I don't have friends because I can't talk, like going through the details of that kind of stuff so that he could come out the other side and be successful and happy and well-adjusted. It is a part of that process. But so often, I think as mothers, especially, we sweep a lot under the rug because we're so busy. We're so focused on our careers and taking care of our children and making sure they have the best food and the best, education system and everything else that we're trying to do, that we tend to push down those feelings and then they come out in unhealthy ways. And we see a lot of that in this space. So that's why it's really important to me to keep encouraging people to reach out and find your tribe of people that are going to support you where you're at and are going to help you get through it. But just acknowledge what we've been through. And Andrea has been my partner in doing that. I've been driving my son down to see his practitioners in San Diego from Seattle. And I'm on the phone with her crying, like I feel like I'm still failing. And, we have a support network that allows us to come through the other side and to be successful and to be the parents that we want to be.
And that's what's been so incredible. I'm fairly new to this movement. Really, COVID is what opened my eyes to all of this. I didn't come into this fight anti-vax. I was pro-vaccine my entire life and nursing career. And unfortunately, I'm very ashamed to admit this now. I had to ask myself these difficult questions. Kimberly, why are you so pro-vaccine anyway? Because we really don't receive very much education at all, other than safe, effective, and necessary. So I had to ask those difficult questions, and it really shamed me to admit that it was simply because I was told to be. Mm-hmm. And that was something that really hurt me. But I will say, this is the medical freedom movement in itself, it's not very large, it's small, it's very tight-knit, right? But the movement really welcomed me with open arms. I will say that. Like I said, I came in, there's moms that have been out here screaming for decades. So to have been welcomed into the fold like that, I'm so grateful. And it's really important that we are meeting people right where they are on their journey, because we all, we have to remember there was a time when I was not awakened. There was maybe a time when you were not awakened to everything that's been going on. So the importance of meeting people where they are and allowing them that space and time to heal. When I first started, Nurse Freedom Network. And I remember writing a Substack very early on when I walked away from my bedside nursing career, and just kind of going through all of the different emotions, the fear, the anger. I mean, I was grieving really the loss of my career and of what I considered the ideal of nursing. I was grieving all of that. And it was very cathartic for me to be able to do it. But this movement and having this incredible network of people to support one another, for me, has just been such a tremendous blessing. And I just want to tell you both, I can't tell you how humbled I was to receive an invitation to last year's Global Leadership Summit for my work that I do with Nurse Freedom Network and for Remnant Healthcare. And to have been invited back this year, I was just truly honored. So I really want to thank you guys for recognizing my work and my contributions to this fight, because like I said, I'm fairly new, 4 years.
Well, Kimberly, we've mentioned this before, you are always at the top of our list, and it's very specific. It's not just because we love you, though we do. It's that your work is truly unique in this space. So we already mentioned how you're a solutions-oriented person, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to take this moment to be mushy, because that's always what you do when you're on a podcast. It's always the appropriate way to go. But truly, I mean, you experienced a radical identity shifting thing in COVID, right? You said it yourself. I'm pro-vax. This is what I was taught. I never had to question it, because this is just what I was. I mean, that's part of your identity that you are taught when you're a nurse. And then you experienced such horrific things that you not only transformed your identity to understand what was going on, you not only made the sacrifice of stepping away from your lifelong career and your identity as a hospital nurse and stepped into, I'm going to heal people now. Yeah. And it's a lot easier, I believe, for a doctor with all of the doctory stuff to step out and say, here's all this stuff, and a nurse to step out and say, I care about you as a patient. I care about you as a human. And then you offered space for people. You didn't just start speaking out as a public figure. You didn't just start a podcast. You created space. You created space for patients to come get true healthcare. That is remarkable. I mean, you were the first on the scene, one of the first on the scene doing this. Then you created space for other nurses to come into the fold, to say, let me wrap my arms around you. We've done this together. We've been through this together. And I don't have the answers, but I sure as heck know that we're going to do this together. And then you created collaborations with true other organizations to help. I use this analogy all the time when describing what we do as the Inspired Network, is that the health freedom movement is functioning like a sports team, right? Where, so my son plays t-ball right now, right? And so when you watch the t-ballers play, the one kid hits the ball and everybody on the field chases the ball, every single one of them. And sometimes the batter will even go chasing the ball. And that's kind of what we do in the health freedom space. We're all chasing the ball. Something pops up in the news, someone dies suddenly, someone passes out, and we all chase it. What you do is you're like, hey, y'all, I am the first baseman over here. So like someone catch that ball out there and toss it in and toss it to me, then I'm going to throw it back to the pitcher. And you have naturally, just by your amazing humanness, by your nursehood, if I will, been able to connect all these other organizations, and you're not stepping on anyone's feet. They're not stepping on yours. You've managed to draw these really important coordinated activities so that the patient doesn't experience a wrong door, so that the person hurting calls any one of these sources and you're able to direct them and connect them. And it is the most beautiful visual of what a true healthcare system should look like, where you are able to treat the human and make sure the human's needs are met. And so, of course, you always have been and always will be at the top of our list, because what you're doing is so humbly beautiful. And I don't even know if you see how beautiful what you're doing is on a regular basis.
I don't know, but you're making me cry over here. I'm like, oh my God, that's pretty impressive. Thank you. Oh my God.
It's really true. And it's because it all comes from your heart. And I just give you so much respect for all of the work that you do and the difference that you're making.
That was such a beautiful, I mean, I don't think I could even describe it any better than that. I think I need to make you my PR team. That might be on my list of things.
You could just record that and keep it next to your bed before you go to bed at night.
I think I may have to play that for positive affirmation because, there are many times, and I'm sure that you've both experienced this as well, when you're just like, is it even worth it? I feel like, I've been out here for 4 years. Does it even matter? They're still pushing the jabs. People are still dying. Is what I'm doing even making a difference? And I've had that feeling and conversation with myself up to this morning. So your words are very encouraging to me, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you so much. And I think you're right, just being able to work collaboratively with these other organizations. Like, this fight is too big for any one individual, any one organization. We can't do this alone. The only way that we are going to win is if we come together and if we slay some jam dragons together. But we all have our niche, right? We all have, my wheelhouse is nursing, and we all have our different niche, and we need to learn how to fulfill that and then be there as, like, some people are utility players, like, to use your sports analogy. We all have a role to play, and we don't step on each other's toes. We support one another and we uplift one another. And I think that that's the beautiful part of this movement.
Absolutely. And I'm going to nerd out for a second, but that's actually the reason why the Inspired Network focuses on relationships. So our focus is on both relationships and strategy, because we recognize that there's the strategy piece makes sense, right? Like, we need strategy. That doesn't mean we need to direct strategy. We need to just have a plan in place. We need to know where we're headed. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But before we get there, I want to talk a bit about the relationships, because strategy is only as good as the relationships upon which they are based. And we know from the science of social change, so when you look back in the scientific literature on all these social movements in the past, both successful and unsuccessful, the one of the most important factors that keeps people engaged. So whether you are a leader, like centrally located in the movement, and you're the person, when you're the leader in the movement, you're experiencing things you just described, Kimberly. I don't think I could put it in better words. You feel tattered down, you feel torn down, you get bruised, right? You're getting all of these hits and you feel like, why am I still here? Well, first of all, part of that is related to the fact that we've been playing the defense for too long. We have been playing the defensive lineup. And you know what happens of defensive lineups? They get beaten down, they get tired, they get exhausted, they get fatigued, and they need a break. And when you look back in the science of social change, the thing that makes a difference, the thing that keeps people connected, the thing that keeps people leading is related to a bunch of constructs related to social identity, social identity, social contagion, social, all of these different psychological constructs related to how you are connected to other people. Human beings are social animals. We need human connection. This is precisely why our opposition, before they do anything else, separates us, because separating us is the most powerful way to weaken us. We're social beings. We need to be connected. And so whether you're talking about a leader in the movement playing the defensive lineup and getting beaten down, or you are talking about someone who shows up to a protest as an attendee. So a protester shows up the first time. The strongest predictor of whether or not they show up the second time is whether their friends are going. Because when we are connected to each other, we persist and we sustain longer in the movement. We're at a point, and again, I'm going to go back to why I think what you've created is so beautiful, because nurses are being beaten down. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're wondering how they could keep going on. And what you do is you wrap your arms around them and you say, we're here for you. And you say, we've got you. Sit on the bench for a little while and we'll put somebody else on the field, right? You give people time to breathe, space to breathe, and a support chain to rest on. So this is why we focus so much. And if we could do that at large for the health freedom movement, our health freedom movement would be so much stronger. When people think about relationships, they think about the touchy-feely stuff. And there's always this feeling of like, if you work on relationships, it's less important. But I can't emphasize enough that looking back at social movements of the past, one of the defining factors of the longevity and sustainability of the impacts of the social movement were how tightly connected individuals were to the movement themselves. When we define ourselves as being freedom fighters in this movement, we are more likely to persist. And that is why Susie and I spend intentional time. Relationships do not just happen magically. There needs to be space and there needs to be intention behind relationships. So we create space for relationships to happen, not the type of relationship where you just shake hands, hand a business card and say, nice to meet you, and have some, really interesting conversation about the weather. But real relationships where you actually get to know each other at the level of humanity, because we cannot pretend we're fighting for humanity when we're afraid to meet each other at the same level of humanity. All of this comes from the heart. And that's where I think relationships play such an incredible role.
Yeah, your strategy is really incredible. And I think you are spot on with what you're saying, because, and I'll throw this analogy in there, like for example, I don't date. I don't date. I hate dating, right? Because I believe that relationships can grow organically from, I think the most basic part is starting your friendship. And it's really about building relationships with people. So yeah, I think it's the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, I believe it is, who said that relationships, marriages don't fail for a lack of love. They fail for a lack of friendship. And that basic relationship building. Once you have that foundation, and then you can choose to maybe add another dimension to it, it's so much easier to build a sustainable, long-lasting relationship with somebody. That's why I don't date, because there's a quote, I can't remember. It's like, dating is the art of, oh God, I can't remember what it is. Like trying to basically pretending to be someone you're not until you find someone to love you for who you are. And to me, it's all fake. So I'm like, I would rather spend the time to get to know somebody, build that relationship, have that foundation, and move from there. And I think it's the same concept with what you're building. It's just that having an emotional relationship, and it makes everything more sustainable, and that connection so much deeper.
And it makes sense when you think about, why collaboration has failed in the in the health freedom movement. Because that concept of collaboration in the health freedom movement is not new. It's simply that people are burnt out of the word. It's become a 4-letter word. And it's because you sit around a table and you decide to collaborate on something. And typically what that means is everyone's going to sit around the first time you sit around the table thinking you're going to be singing Kumbaya and having this peaceful, amazing time where you change the world. But what really ultimately happens is decisions need to get made at some point. And at some point, someone's opinion is not someone shares an opinion that doesn't become the final decision, and they then feel demoralized and unheard. And then that breeds a bit of resentment. So then it creates this weird dynamic on the team until they eventually peace out, and you're left with a couple people who are now feeling like the entire collaborative effort fell on their lap, and there goes the collaboration. Right? I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but I think everyone has experienced some story along this lines.
Well, it's true. And like those are the type of people that are going to be attracted to, or that do these type of things, and that step out into this space. We're all very type A personalities, right?
Right.
Very type A personalities. So we all have that, I don't want to call it ego so much, maybe a little bit. But it's difficult for us to not, be recognized, if you will, or to kind of meet in the middle. So you're up against a challenge, and I can say you do amazingly well in this.
Thank you. And the flip side of it is, like, Susie and I disagree all the time. Maybe not all the time. We agree on more than we disagree, but we have our share of disagreements, but we have a foundation of love. Yeah. And so it is easier to push back and when your opinion gets shot down in the context of love, you no longer feel demoralized. So relationships are the foundation of which all of our work is based, and not everyone has to love each other. I don't take that task on. I'm a crazy person, but I'm not that crazy.
Right.
But if we could at least create a culture of collaboration where the social norm is that we have enough mutual respect for each other to be critical friends of our ideas and disagree responsibly, then we will be a lot better off than we are right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And we've got very limited time for this side. We're coming up on a hard break, but I do want to hear a little bit from Susie about, what are your thoughts about, as far as what we talked about, the kind of personality types, the personality clashes, and how can we come together, in your estimation, to move forward as best we can for the greater good of this movement?
Yeah, I think that Andrea really hit the nail on the head. The reason we started working together is we met at a conference that we were speaking at individually. And I just heard the way that she was talking about creating solutions and moving forward. And it was like all the buzzwords that I hear and I've tried to use as well, but it doesn't usually work out. But I went up to her because I sensed and I heard a different level of conviction in her voice, that she actually understood how we could get to, instead of just saying #solutions, that we could actually get to real solutions, that we could create a path forward together, that we could create this shared vision of what does health freedom look like? What does sovereignty look like to you? And so I started talking to her, and we created Inspired Network and a bunch of other initiatives off that you read about earlier. And it was just like such a breath of fresh air, Kimberly. It just went from this, I was feeling kind of hopeless of like, where are we going to go from here? I've been in this space for 15 years. It's not really changing that much. Then COVID stuff came along and everyone got beaten down and just worn out. Like, people get just worn out from showing up to all the rallies and to going to all the conferences, it's all the same stuff, because what's the actual outcome of that? So building relationships is a huge part of that. And like she said, strategic action. And Andrea does have that framework background, which Andrea probably will talk about in the next half of this show, but where she's been in this space so that she does know how to get us from A to B to C to D and to have outcomes that make us successful. And that's why we call the Inspired Network a backbone, because we are that support and that structure. We're not trying to tell people what to do. We're not trying to change their minds. We're not trying to take over their projects, but we are coming in to create an infrastructure that makes all of us more successful in working together.
America Out Loud Talk Radio plays on the iHeartRadio network. You can also listen on our media player from any web browser anywhere in the world. We have the best in-class apps available on Apple, Android, or Alexa, 24/7. Great talk radio. Don't forget to check out our online store at americaoutloud.shop, where you can find all of the products that we represent on our network at a discounted rate. I'll catch you on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
It's time and this is why.
Cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, inflammation, and weight. These are all real-world problems that 87% of Americans are struggling with. Often, there are no symptoms, but left unattended, we become inundated with one health problem after another. It's time to fight back with Heal Right. Heal Right is a bar that you eat, but it's food as medicine that addresses the nutritional root cause of health issues in just 8 weeks. Developed by world-renowned scientists and backed by 15 years of research, Heal Right is effective, but it's also delicious and works without additional diet or lifestyle changes. Step out of the statistics and use food as medicine. Visit healright.com/outloud or americaoutloud.shop and use the code OUTLOUD for 20% off.
You've all heard Dr. McCullough and others share over and over the value of keeping your sinuses cleansed. It's a smart move all year, but even more so when we're cooped up inside. It's not really open for debate any longer. Those that live smart and live well pay attention to nasal and oral hygiene. Cofix RX has just the tools for the job with our nasal and throat cleanse. Click the Cofix RX banner on americaoutloud.shop to get 20% off your entire order. That's right, americaoutloud.shop. Use coupon code OUTLOUD. That's coupon code OUTLOUD for 20% off your entire order.
Use Cofix RX because it works.
Don't accept joint aches and stiffness as part of aging. Doctors at Advanced Nutrition Company, Healthy Cell, created joint health and mobility to support connective tissue, joint lubrication, and reduce joint irritation with curcumin, omega-3, chondroitin, glucosamine, and hyaluronic acid for joint comfort and flexibility. And Healthy Cell's not a pill, it's a gel you swallow. Get 100% drug-free joint support. Go to healthycell.com and use code OUTLOUD for 25% off your first order. That's healthycell.com. Code OUTLOUD.
Many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Our goal is to herald the voice of genuine liberty at AmericaOutloud.news, a place where you'll find the naked truth expressed with a patriotic heart. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. America Out Loud Talk Radio. Liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Wherever you're listening from today and whatever you're doing, I thank you for giving me the gift of your time. Be sure to make AmericaOutloud.news your daily stop for all the latest news and happenings. We all must do our part and share the stories, the articles, the podcasts, and videos so we can help secure America's future. If you're just joining us, I've been talking to co-founders of the Inspired Network, Susie Olson-Corrigan and Dr. Andrea Nazarenko. Ladies, welcome back. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you guys being here. And I really want to hear and spend the last little bit of time that we have together really focusing on what is the Geneva Project, and tell me about this event, the incredible event that's coming up in Geneva, Switzerland.
Absolutely. So the Geneva Project stemmed from this really basic idea, almost too intuitive to that most people don't even think about it, where, we have been taught for the past decades, for some of us, most of our lives, that, well, quite frankly, that we, the people, are powerless, that we are helpless. What we learned in the pandemic, what they taught in the pandemic, I won't say what we learned, they taught in the pandemic is that we're victims, that we're the powerless few, we're oppressed, and we need our government or our experts or our globalists to save us. That's basically the message that has been sent, except the problem with this messaging is that we actually weren't powerless at all. We weren't the victims. In fact, we just won the biggest battle of our life. We were the victors. We overcame. Not only did we overcome, but we thrived. We have come to the other side stronger, more united, more educated, more open, and bigger than we have ever been before. We are not powerless, we are powerful. And when you think about the globalist as a whole, there are maybe 5,000 of them. I have no idea how many there actually are. Let's go with 5,000. There are few of them. And there are 8 billion of us. Yes. For decades, for our whole lives and the generations that preceded us, we have been implicitly and subconsciously allowing them to control us. We cannot be controlled if we do not want to be controlled, because while they have the money and they have the power systems, we have 8 billion people. And when we decide collectively that they no longer matter, their power and their money goes away. We are not the victims. We have allowed ourselves to believe we're the victims. And when we rise up and we stand together and we do not allow ourselves to be divided by the things they want us to be divided by, politics, religion, gender, enter in whatever divisive thing you want to enter in, because it's all concocted, it's all planned, because when we're separated and fighting, they get ahead. It is time for us to recognize that we all want the same thing. We all want to be able to live our lives the way we feel is best. We all want happy, content, healthy children. We do not want innocent people to die. We want to rejoin humanity. And when we are able to do that, the future is ours. There is so much attention right now, so much attention, and rightfully so, on the pandemic treaty and the amendments to the international health regulations, the IHR amendments, that will be voted on most likely during World Health Assembly Week in May. The issue is that even if we win that battle, even if they vote down the treaty and they reject the IHR amendments, we're still in an abusive relationship with the globalists. They still want one health. They still want one world, and they still want a black and white world where we remain divided so that they could continually gain. The expectation that they will ever have our best interests at heart is faulty at the core. They are the few, we are the many. We are 8 billion people united. So we are flooding to Geneva on June 1st. We are clashing in the streets energetically, not physically. It is an energetic clashing of ideologies of the future. We know what they want. It's not the future we want. The future we want is filled with color again. It's filled with individual sovereignty. It's filled with national pride and national cultural recognition. We do not all want to be the same. And we resist the concept that they've created. So we are headed to Geneva. We're headed to Geneva in a massive, historic citizens convoy. It's a pan-European convoy, but it has since extended out because we don't care if you come on plane, train, or automobile, just get to Geneva. We have people coming from all across the world to converge in Geneva in a statement of our freedom. We are uniting as people at the level of humanity. We are not there to fight the WHO. This is not an anti-WHO rally, because it is time we stop placing our attention into an energy on that which we do not want. It is time to start placing our energy in the future that we do want, and hate and violence and anger are not what we want in the future, especially for our children. So we are joining as a globe. We, the people of the world, and we are marching towards our future, and we are declaring our independence from the global authorities that do not represent us and will never have our best interests at heart. It is time we make their vote obsolete. Let's stop fighting systems that will never change and start creating systems that work for us. Now, of course, we all know that simply standing on stage and throwing glitter in the air is not going to change the world. It's going to do good. It's going to create social norms. It's going to inspire others. It's going to do all of that stuff. But in order to actually create new systems that serve the people, we need to do the hard work. We need to do the hard work of setting goals, of determining where we want to go, creating shared vision, pushing each other on testing assumptions, and pushing each other's boundaries to reimagine what we think is possible. So in addition to a historic convergence in Geneva and celebratory rally for the future, we will be hosting a global leadership summit where folks from all over the world, we've got folks from Eastern and Western Europe, Canada, United States, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. Susie could chime in with all of the countries I forgot, but we've got truly a global team coming together, meeting in Geneva to do the hard work it takes to set a foundation for a proactive strategy for change. We talked about how exhausting the defensive strategy is. We're tired, we're battered, we're torn. It's time to put our offensive lineup together. And wouldn't it be nice if our side could start scoring some goals? The Geneva Project is the initiation of a turning point in the trajectory of our world. It is the point where we say we are no longer simply relying on them for change. We are the change. The accountability falls on us, and we are proclaiming it and doing the hard, grueling work it takes to move ourselves forward in a long-term strategy to create the world that we want to see.
Amen. I don't think
that's why I have Andrea do it. I could not recite all of that.
I mean, you're 100% right, though. The power lies with the people, right? It always has. It's not we have the numbers to right the ship, but too many lack the courage. So stepping forward like you have and inspiring others to be able to do the same is incredibly important. And I just applaud both of you and everyone who is taking part in the Geneva project. I'm really sad that I won't be able to be there. I cannot tell you how sad I am. I will not be able to make this trip. But unfortunately, just, financially, it's been a rough year, giving up everything. And I wasn't able to make it work this time, but, moving forward, I'm going to be all in. I'm all in.
Absolutely. And
one
of the really important parts of this project and what we're doing, particularly related to the summit, is we're developing a science-based strategy and infrastructure for proactive change. This is not throwing wet paper towels at the wall and hoping that it sticks. This is based in best practices on how you coordinate action, build infrastructure, develop capacities, and actually create the vision of the people. The major piece of that sentence, with a lot of words in it, was of the people. And so I say that to say, this is not a group of leaders together and thinking of what they want to see in the world. All of the stimulus for discussion that will be in that room came from the outcomes of surveys we did of the general public and focus groups of freedom fighters in the movement. And at the end of it, while it is an invite-only private event, the privacy is so that we can be efficient and effective. The outcomes are fully transparent. So the outcomes of this meeting will be posted on our website, theinspirednetwork.org. And it's a work in progress. So we will need the input of listeners out there, because there is no point in creating a shared vision of the future if we don't have the voice of all of the people. So we encourage you to get connected to us. I'll leave that to Susie to do all of that detail stuff because she's much better at that than I am. But we will be looking for nurses in focus groups to respond to the outcome of this summit. We'll be looking for surveys to be taken so that your voice could be shared. We'll be doing key interviews with people like yourself, Kimberly, to take the outcome of this and move us further. And we will be having follow-up summits to deepen this. This is a process. It is an inclusive input process where we're truly trying to represent. Susie and I rarely call ourselves leaders. We mostly call ourselves facilitators, because what we're doing is taking the input of the collective and distilling it to the component parts that are shared and figuring out where the points of convergence are, where the points of divergence are, and using that as empirical questions to explore more. This is a process of getting to where we need to go. And so all of the listeners out there, connect with us, share, you could, be part of our follow-up questions, have your voice be heard, because the ultimate quality of the outcome will be as good as the input we receive. And it, of course, the best way to support us is both by joining our networks. You could go to our website, you could go to our socials, and you could volunteer with us. And then obviously, as Kimberly mentioned, doing this work comes at a high financial cost. So if you're in a position where you could pledge support, we also have a tab on our website, theinspirednetwork.org/pledge. And we would love your support so we could continue doing this in the long term.
Amen. And we'll make sure that we include links to everything in the show notes, all of your socials and all of your websites.
I just wanted to jump in and point out one thing that Andrea kind of touched upon here. It's that last year we had an Inspired Summit in January of 2023. And after that summit, we had all these meetings. We did Envision focus groups. We did do the survey. We got feedback. We spoke to people. We have monthly Inspired hours with people that are part of the Inspired Network that are closed door, Zoom meetings where we share information with one another and figure out how we can support each other's projects and latest research coming out, so on and so forth. But what the Inspired Summit was last year compared to what it is this year is completely different. It still has the same core foundation of collaboration and creating a shared vision, but it's so distilled down now because of the work that we've done from last summit. We've gone through multiple iterations to get to where we are now because of taking in that input. And so that goes back to the fact that Andrea and I are not trying to lead. We are trying to facilitate, and we're tracking all of this that comes in so that we can be the most effective that we can be when we are sitting in that room working together, because it is one day and we get a surprising amount of work done in one day, but it still is one day. So we want people to know that whether you're in that summit room or not, that you can contribute to what we're doing. Like Andrea said, our outcomes will be shared with the network, and we would love to have your input and insight. We don't know what we don't know. I came here because my child was injured by vaccinations, 16 years ago. Andrea came here for her own personal reason, and she has 3 healthy boys that get to live, the lives that all children should be able to. So we come from very different spaces. So our input is based off of that. Now we have people like you, Kimberly, with your input of losing your job because you weren't willing to go along with these mandates that you saw were causing people harm. We have teachers that are coming alongside of us. We have other podcasters in other countries. And with all of that collective information, we're able to refine this to make it the most effective that it can be to create the future that we want.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible to be a part of this movement. I've probably said that 20 times, but I feel like I have to reiterate it just over and over again, how grateful and blessed I feel to be a part of just such a meaningful movement, because you really are facilitating change. And we've all touched on it, that sometimes we don't feel like that is happening. We feel like we're at, a standstill and nothing is happening. And is all of the sacrifice worth it? And the answer is yes, because humanity is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said that so beautifully.
Yeah, we want to leave the world better for our children, and we are, and we will. So that's part of the inspire part of Inspired Network. We want to inspire people to know that they can create change. You know, you don't have to have the biggest podcast. You don't have to be the celebrity. You don't need to be a politician. You as an individual with your perspective going out and networking with people and being a part of things like this, your voice will be heard and you will make a lasting impact.
Susie has heard me say this a million times, but I will reiterate it again. I think, you know, the term social influencer is so obscure in our society because the people who have the strongest influence in society, I believe, are the hairdressers, the bartenders, the waitresses, the people you come and cut, the person checking you out at the grocery store. Think about getting your hair cut. What do? You go in and you walk in with all of this baggage from everything that has happened to you previously to that in the day. And then you leave feeling better, and you don't just feel better because your hair looks beautiful, hopefully. You leave because you just connected with somebody. And you talked about whatever was going on in your life. You talked about your strike. The same is true with a bartender. You walk in, you sit at the bar, especially, you know, like the old Cheers bar. I'm dating myself. But, you know, you walk in and you sit down, and it's not about the beer you're having. It's about the connection you had with the other individual. And sometimes just planting the smallest seed of like, isn't it kind of weird that they don't tell us about the risks of that vaccine? I mean, you don't even have to talk about vaccines. You could just talk about, you know, a small little bit. Oh, yes, my best friend's child was injured by vaccines. And just dropping that little ripple starts the other person in motion. And when you have a job like a hairdresser or a bartender or, you know, fill in the blanket in another service industry, you have the potential to influence hundreds of people per week by simply dropping little tiny messages. I'm not suggesting you like start political arguments, you know, while cutting someone's hair, but you're able to influence thought, to stimulate thought in a gentle, human connected way, because they're showing up and they already love you because you're making them look beautiful. So if we could harness the true influencers in society, the people who really make coaches on baseball teams and football teams, like, hello, talk about creating the next future generation. This is how the world changes. It doesn't just change on, I mean, I love podcasts. I obviously talk a lot, but where the change happens is over the dinner table, getting your hair cut and, you know, picking your kid up at Carline.
You're 100% correct. And I say this all the time, you know, we have to approach each other. We have to plant those little seeds. And it's really about approaching people with love. And again, meeting them where they are on their journey. We're not all in the same place. But for me personally, my approach is I just like to ask thought-provoking questions and just plant that seed and take it from there. You know, if somebody's thirsty, we don't hit them with the fire hose, we give them a sip of water. And I think that is a much better approach. Just plant the seed and have those important conversations. That is the civil discourse. We've really got to find a way to learn how to engage in civil discourse. Again, that is how our society moves forward. It's the only way that our society will move forward is by being able to engage in that civil discourse and respecting one another once again in our different views. And at the end of the day, we may not agree, but we can all agree to disagree and feel welcome in that space and in our united humanity. I thank you ladies so much for joining me. I'm sadly out of time. I will have to have you both back because there's so much more that we could delve into. I mean, we could talk for hours. No doubt. But ladies,
we would love that, Kimberly.
In fact, we have talked for hours, Kimberly.
we actually have. I will bring you back for sure. I want to bring you back and hear the outcome of the Geneva project.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much. And that's all the time that we have for today, friends. But remember, we are here on the air 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can also catch the encore at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please be sure to tune in and listen to myself and my amazing sister nurses. As we walk you through all of these hot topics, we will empower you with information and education. We will advocate and we will stand in the gap for you because we are nurses and this is what we do. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton, and you can find me here every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until next time, be safe, be well, and God bless. Remember, we are in a war for truth. we're putting out a bounty on the real misinformation and exposing the purveyors of propaganda. No topic is off limits as we shine our lights and expose the darkness.
It's time